everyone, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. Oh my gosh, it's been like 3 weeks since I posted a video, and obviously a lot has happened in that 3 weeks. I did give birth to my son finally, which was amazing, and it's just been crazy and hectic getting used to life with a newborn. So today's video is really exciting because I'm finally sharing my labor and delivery story with you guys, and I really quickly wanted to just apologize for disappearing off of YouTube for the past 3 weeks. My intent was to have videos filmed and edited and ready to upload in case I didn't have time to edit and upload them, and I did have some videos filmed, but I didn't get a chance to edit them or upload them, and it's just been kind of hectic finding the time. So that being said, I have a lot of catching up to do. There's a ton of pre-recorded videos that I need to upload, and I wanted to get these update videos out to you guys because it's been 3 weeks now, and my son is actually 3 weeks old today, which is crazy. So without further ado, I'm just going to get right into this labor and delivery story. I'm also going to be filming my 3-week postpartum update and newborn essentials video right after this, so I'll probably have the same thing on. And at the end of this video, I will be introducing you guys to my son, which is really exciting, and you'll also find out his name. So definitely stay tuned if you're interested in finding out how my labor and delivery went. Just note that it did not go nearly as close to how I wanted it to go, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Okay, so backtracking 3 weeks. As you guys may or may not have known, I was 5 days overdue. My son was due on the 21st, and I actually had him on the 26th. And I was scheduled to have him induced on the 28th, and I did talk about my fears of that. Like, I really did not want to have to be induced. I wanted him to come on his own, come naturally, and all of that. I also, doing a little summary, have wanted to do a natural birth this entire time. I did not want an epidural, minimal pain medicine. I just wanted to do it as natural as possible. I also wanted my son to be put directly on my chest, skin to skin, which is the best thing to do right after delivery, and have him latch on his own and all of that. Needless to say, none of that happened. So on the morning of the 25th, August 25th, actually not the morning, the afternoon of August 25th, I had my 40-week checkup. I was already 4 days past due, and everything was fine. The baby was head down, but he wasn't as far along as they wanted. He was a lot further than the previous week, but I was about 3 centimeters dilated, and he was about 80% dropped, and my cervix was still about 2, it was like at a 2, I think, and it was at a 3, and they needed it to be completely effaced. Well, that didn't happen. So my doctor decided to do a very vigorous membrane sweep. She did a membrane sweep the week before, but that didn't really do anything but just give me uncomfortable contractions for that day. So that membrane sweep happened around 1 p.m. on the 25th, and then about 7 p.m. on the 25th, yeah, I had some like uncomfortable contractions after that, which is normal after a membrane sweep, but my contractions started getting more and more painful around 7 p.m. Definitely not Braxton Hicks like I've been having, more along labor pains. So because of that, I got very excited, trying not to get my hopes up, but I did have some pretty intense labor pains at that point, but they were very sporadic. They were very painful and uncomfortable, but very sporadic, not really having a pattern to them, so I wouldn't really call that labor pains yet. I was not in pre-labor or early labor. They were just very sporadic. Then around 2 a.m., I tried to go to sleep, which is what they tell you to do when you have contractions. Just try to go to sleep until you can't anymore, just to kind of get things moving along a little. You want to relax. So I tried to sleep, but 2 a.m. hit and it was not happening. My contractions started getting more and more regular. At that point, they were about 7 to 8 minutes apart and stayed that way until about 5 a.m. And they were just very intense, very painful. They're no joke. Definitely painful. So about 5 a.m. is when they started getting a little bit closer, and they were about 4 to 5 minutes apart. But since this was my first baby, I did not know what to do. I already knew what to do, but my doctor told me about 5 minutes apart for at least an hour to call in, and labor and delivery will let me know what to do. Well, I called in about 6 o'clock, and my contractions were regular, about 5 minutes apart for an entire hour. But since this was my first baby and I told them my symptoms, they told me to try to stay at home as long as possible until they got closer to 3 to 4 minutes apart for an entire hour, since it was my first baby. My contractions started kind of getting further apart, but more intense, and with my contractions I had the urge to poop, which is something that they look for because that means you have the urge to push, and that's not something you want to do early. So I tried to wait as long as possible. My contractions were still between 5 and 6 minutes apart. They were lasting an hour at that time, but not where they needed me to be. Finally at 10:30 I couldn't take it anymore because every contraction I had the urge to push, and it was really painful. Just kind of fighting back that urge, and the contractions were really painful and very strong, at least to me. So I called labor and delivery again, and I told them that I had waited. I was trying to wait for my contractions to be closer together, but this urge to push was really making me uncomfortable. So they told me, fine, come in and we'll check you and see how things are, because we don't want you to push before you have to. So yay, I was on my way to the hospital and excited. We ended up getting to the hospital about 11:30 or so, and they had a room waiting for me, and the nurses told me to change. I got all my bags. Actually, I didn't get my bags. My bags were in the car, so I didn't have the gown that I wanted to actually deliver in because I wasn't planning on being admitted. They had told me that if I wasn't far enough along, they were going to send me back. So I didn't bring any of my stuff up except for my purse, and when I got there they told me to change. So I had to wear that ugly hospital gown, but it's okay. And you know, the nurse checked me and all that, and I still was not far enough along. I was about 4 centimeters dilated, which is a little bit more than the 3 centimeters from the day before, but I was still at 80%, and my baby was not dropping enough. So they wanted to kind of keep me there just to monitor me and see how my contractions are, and they were monitoring my contractions and could see that they were very strong, but I just wasn't far enough along. So I was there for about 2 hours before they decided to admit me. Throughout that time, the nurse kept checking me, and they noticed that my bag of waters was bulging, which means at any minute my bag of waters could have broken, and they didn't want to really send me home. I live about 40 minutes away from that hospital, and they didn't want to send me home for me to come right back because my bag of waters was about to break. So my doctor came in, and she's like, oh, so excited because she didn't want to have to induce me, and I was excited because I didn't want to have to be induced. But since my bag of waters was bulging and they thought that that was preventing the baby from dropping, which it was, she decided to admit me at about 2 o'clock, and they broke my waters for me. So about 3 p.m. is when she broke my waters, and at that point my contractions were so intense, like so intense, and the breaking of the water made them crazy intense. So I was 4 centimeters before they broke my water, and pretty much 20 minutes later I dropped from 4, or I gained from 4 to 6 centimeters. At 3:20, like the minute she broke my waters, my contractions were so intense that I needed something, and she knew my plan to have it naturally as much as possible, but you know, a little bit of pain meds here and there wasn't gonna hurt me. I was open to that. So she gave me something called fentanyl, about 320, and that's supposed to help take the edge off the pain. It doesn't take the pain away by any means, but kind of take the edge off. It did not work. Pretty much all it did was make me very dizzy and nauseous, but no pain was relieved whatsoever, and no edge was taken off that pain either. It was just not happening. And between then and about 5 o'clock, they kept checking me, and I was still 6 centimeters. He did drop, all that, but they noticed when he dropped that he was not facing the correct way. My pains were so intense, and at that point I was already having like intense labor pains for at least 12 hours, not including the sporadic ones that started at 7 p.m. the night before. From 2 a.m. to 2 p.m. when I was admitted, 12 hours of labor pains so far. And about 5 o'clock, or between 3 and 5 o'clock, they checked me and noticed that the baby was, instead of facing down like he was supposed to be. He was facing up. He was head down, but instead of facing the floor, he was facing the ceiling. And because of that, my pains that I've been feeling this whole time was back labor, because his head, the back of his skull, was pressing against my spine, and that's why I had the urge to push this entire time, because he was putting so much pressure on my spine and my tailbone and all of that. So they found that out, and it's not ideal for the baby to be delivered that way. It can happen, but it's not ideal, and it's a lot more painful. So her goal switched to trying to face him down instead of up. And at that point, I was in so much pain, and they were just urging me to get the epidural because I was not nearly close to be pushing, and it was just unbearable. It was at the point where I couldn't walk, I couldn't sit, I couldn't lay down, like I couldn't do anything. It was just so painful, and I was really, really upset. I did not want the epidural at all, but I could not continue. I was exhausted, I barely slept. It was just really, really painful. Okay, sorry, I had to calm him down because he was crying. But I believe I left off at talking about how I really did not want this epidural, but it was just too unbearable. So at about 5 p.m. I did get the epidural. To about 2 hours after they broke my waters, I just could not go through with it. And you know, the doctor and my husband, they assured me, you know, if it was them, they would also, because my contractions were just so intense, and it made me feel a little bit better, but you know, things happen, and that's what I have to be open to. And unfortunately, sometimes you can't control the situation. Which brings me to the rest of my labor. So from 5 to 6 p.m., I jumped from 6 centimeters to 9 centimeters. So I was getting very close, but still not where they needed me to be. Oh, I forgot I was saying that my doctor really wanted to turn the baby the right position, which is face down. So she put something called the peanut, which is like a really big exercise ball, but it's shaped like this, if that makes sense. They put that in between my legs. Obviously, I could not feel my legs. I could feel my feet, but I could not actually lift or move my legs, so I had to keep switching sides, and they had to keep helping me. But she put that in between my legs on each side, and we had to just keep turning back and forth until the baby was in the right position. One thing that happened with the epidural, which does happen sometimes, it tends to travel, which is why they have to keep flipping you from side to side. But I had the epidural and it felt a lot better, but my pains did not go away completely. My left side did not take to the epidural like they wanted it to, and I was still in very intense pain just on my left side, not so much on my right. And even though they were switching back and forth, it just wasn't working for some reason. And I had the button to self-administer the epidural to myself, like when I felt like I needed more, and you can do that every 15 minutes or so, but it just was not working, and I still felt a lot of pain, which was unfortunate, because why get the epidural if you're still going to feel pain anyways? And epidurals, they take the pain of the contraction away, but not the feeling of pushing. So that's, you know, I knew I was going to still feel pressure, but the pain of the contraction is what I needed to go away. But that didn't happen for a while. I'd say about 2 hours, 2.5 hours later is when it finally took full effect throughout most of my body. I still felt it, but not nearly as much. I still felt it in my left side though, just not as intense. So, I mean, that was good. It kind of took a lot of edge off, and I was able to relax a little bit, which was great because I had to push very soon. At about 9 p.m., I was fully dilated at 10 centimeters. Everything, the baby was fully dropped, and they were just ready or waiting for him to start entering the birth canal, which he was at that point. And he did turn, which is great. That peanut thing was a miracle worker. He was no longer facing up, he was face down like he was supposed to, so that helped a lot. I started pushing about 9-10 p.m. And it was very, very intense. I pushed for about an hour and 10 minutes, and that was the longest hour and 10 minutes of my life. Pretty much they had me pushing every time I had a contraction, which was very frequent. And I wanted to push every time I had a contraction, even though I needed to give me and the baby a break at some points. I needed this baby out of me. At that point, I was just so tired and ready to give up. Toward the end, I did have a little bit of issues. They noticed that I was getting a fever and the baby's heart rate was dropping every time I pushed. So for that reason, they put oxygen on me for the baby's heart rate. So every time I stopped pushing, they put the oxygen on me and the baby's heart rate shot back up, which was great. But I was not really paying attention or aware of what was going on. I didn't even realize I had a fever. And the reason that I had a fever was that the baby pooped in the womb, which is that he passed something called meconium or something like that, which is when they poop in the womb, and it causes a infection of the placenta, which is chorioamnionitis, I believe. So my placenta got infected, and they needed the baby to get out like soon, and my temperature was rising because of that, and it was just very, very all over the place. So finally, he was born at 10:21 p.m. It was the most relieving thing ever. I was very overwhelmed, but very not, like, I didn't cry or anything. I was just so tired at that point. I was so happy that he was out. Okay, so my son has joined us, and I will show you guys him in a little bit, but I just needed to pick him up because he was fussing a little bit. But so he cried as soon as he was born, which is great, but because of the complications that kind of happened at the end, I could not have skin to skin like I wanted. At least not right away. I had to wait at least 30 minutes to an hour, I think, before I can get him on me or even hold him. They took him to the warmer right away because he also had a fever, and they needed to check all his vitals and whatnot, and they needed to start me on antibiotics. And in the meantime, while they were checking all of his stuff, the doctor was sewing me up because I did tear. I had about a 2nd-degree tear, and she was down there for a while and sewing me up, and I was just in so much pain at that point. But I was so tired and just ready to be over and done with and have my son in my arms. So I finally was able to hold him, and it was the most magical thing ever. Like, I could not believe that this thing came out of me, which is weird to say, but it's true. And he actually latched on almost right away, which is really great. And he has a good latch and everything, which is great because I really wanted to breastfeed and I was worried about that. But he was born at 6 pounds 4 ounces, which they were a little concerned about because he was a little bit small for his gestational age. Him being overdue, he was on the smaller side. And also he was 19 and a half inches long, which is great. Me and him had to stay in the hospital for a full 48 hours, what ended up being about 3 days after, so that they can monitor him, of which I had antibiotics and then he had antibiotics administered just to kind of watch, make sure, well, mine was to fight the infection and his was precaution, just to make sure nothing passed through to him. And in that stay, we did have some concerns, like issues with his breathing. He had a little bit of fluid in his lungs, and also his body temperature. He was having a hard time regulating that because he was so small. It often dropped below 97.7 degrees, which is what they wanted. That's the ideal temperature, that or and above. And his often dropped to 96, so he was in the warmer a lot. He also had a little bit of issues regulating his blood sugar, but that kind of solved itself. And on the 29th, we were able to go home, so that was really exciting. That's pretty much everything that happened in my labor and delivery. Like I said, nothing went as planned. I wanted a natural labor. I wanted skin to skin. I did not want epidural. I didn't not want any of that. But it didn't go the way I wanted to, and I didn't anticipate having back labor. It was a fear of mine, actually. I really did not want to have back labor because I heard the stories that back labor is a lot more intense than regular labor, but I mean, things happen, and I won't actually know for sure if that's true until my next child. If that labor goes normal and is not back labor, then I'll be able to tell the difference. But this labor was just so intense, and I went as long as I could. I went probably about 15 hours before an epidural of having intense back labor like that. So I mean, I went as long as I could. I was in labor for a total of 20 hours, I believe, from when they started getting intense and regular at 2 a.m. to when I delivered at 10:20 p.m. or 10:21 p.m. So 20 hours. It was such a long day. It was just so long, but I have a healthy baby boy and I am loving every moment of being a mom, and it's just been a ride. It's been a very crazy ride. I'm getting used to having a newborn and having a son, but I wouldn't change it. So that is pretty much my labor and delivery story. If you guys have any questions, anything that I might have left out, because I know there was a lot of information and I'm sure I left something out somewhere, definitely leave any questions or anything you have for me down below. I wanted to mention that I actually did not even touch my hospital bag until my final day, or actually the day before I was discharged, and then the day of my discharge. Most of that stuff I did not even touch. I was in the regular hospital gown for a while before I got my robe on and the other gown. It was just so uncomfortable, and I didn't want to ruin the stuff that I had bought. I didn't even wear the underwear that I brought. I just wore the disposable one that they had because I was bleeding so much after that. I was so swollen, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in my postpartum vlog, because there's a lot of things that people don't tell you happen. People say, oh, delivery is really hard and labor and all that, and all the stuff that happens in labor, but nobody really tells you what happens after labor and what you have to deal with. So I'll be talking about that in my next vlog. Hey, baby. Okay, so this is my son. Hopefully you guys can see him and he's not blurry or anything, but this is my son, Elijah. We decided on Elijah finally, and I love it, and I love him. And he's a little bit sleepy. He's like half asleep right now. But he is 3 weeks old now, and I have loved every moment of it. Like I said, he's really tiny. He might be about 8 pounds now, but at his 2-week checkup, he finally hit 7 pounds. We are actually in Tampa right now. I don't even think I mentioned that. This is a weird background, but we're in Tampa visiting family, and he's gonna meet the rest of the family soon. Which is really exciting because where me and my husband live, we don't live near family, so they're all really excited to meet him. And yeah, he's just a really good baby, and I could not be happier. Yeah, this is him. He's swaddled. This is like his favorite thing in the world, is to be swaddled and have a hat on. But yeah, so this is my son, like I said. And yeah, this is for everybody who wanted to see him and meet him, and I really wanted to let you guys know what his name was. So it is Elijah, like I said. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really wanted to share my labor and delivery story with you guys. I know I had a bunch of requests for it, and I just wanted to let you guys know how things went and have you meet my son. If you are not subscribed to my channel, definitely subscribe, and also follow me on all my social medias, which I'll have linked down below, just to stay updated on my life. I do post a lot of pictures of him on Snapchat if you want to follow me on there. Also, this video will join the rest of my pregnancy videos, which the playlist is linked down below, so go ahead and check that out. And if you have any requests for anything, any questions, concerns, or anything like that, definitely leave me a comment down below. But I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.